Bueno, bienvenidos. Today is going to be a bilingual podcast, so we'll keep it español and English. ¿Vos hablas español? Sí, exacto. But we do both because you speak English only. Well, first, I'd love it if you guys introduce yourselves first to the audience before I do my long-winded introductions. I feel like people usually introduce themselves better than I can ever do it.
Bueno, yo soy Filip Karađorđević o Príncipe Felipe de Serbia. Vengo desde Serbia, desde Belgrado, donde vivo con mi mujer Danica y mi hijo Stefan, que tiene 5 años. Y yo estaba trabajando en el mundo financiero tradicional casi 15 años, en la mayor parte en Londres. Pero en 2020, cuando empezó la pandemia, tenía la oportunidad de mudarse a Serbia con mi familia. Y ese también fue el año cuando empecé a entender realmente lo que es Bitcoin y por qué importaba tanto el Bitcoin. Y ya con mi vida en Belgrado ya estaba trabajando en mi trabajo financiero tradicional, pero también haciendo cosas con mi mujer, somos bastante activos en el mundo no social, pero comentando de la situación en Serbia, de la región, y no somos silenciosos, tenemos una opinión de lo que vemos, el problema del sistema, de cosas de día en día. Y cuando empecé a entender lo que era Bitcoin, ahí es cuando quería salir del mundo financiero tradicional y empezar a trabajar para solo Bitcoin. Y ya el año pasado, casi ya un año exactamente, es cuando yo en un programa de televisión nacional como evening show, hablé sobre el Bitcoin. Y es ahí cuando ese clip de 2 o 3 minutos de yo hablar de Bitcoin se fue viral por Twitter, por Bitcoin, por YouTube y después de eso yo estaba grabando podcast con gente como vosotros y me invitaron a Miami a la conferencia de Bitcoin y ahí donde encontré a Samson y Samson empezó su nueva compañía Jan 3 y quería que yo trabajara para Jan 3 y así que todo funcionaba muy bien y yo claro que lo aceptó y aquí estamos hoy hablando en visitando países como Costa Rica.
Claro, es interesante como tu historia, ¿verdad? Creo que tiene un megáfono más grande al ser, ¿verdad? Parte de una familia real,
sí,
o históricamente real en Serbia, ¿verdad? Y es una historia muy particular también, ¿verdad? La realeza en Serbia porque tiene muchas aristas en cuanto a se reconoce, luego pasa un momento, luego vuelven a Serbia, ¿verdad?
Sí, eso,
es todo un tema.
Mi familia fue expulsada durante la Segunda Guerra Mundial y nos quitaron todas nuestras propiedades y nos echaron. Mi padre nació en Londres en 1945, fuera de su país y eso, ya que estamos viviendo la familia Karađorđević, la dinastía de Karađorđević fuera de Serbia muchos años. Había unos que estaban más en Yugoslavia, pero no podíamos estar ahí en nuestro país cómodo. Pero ya en 2001 es cuando cambió un poco las cosas y podíamos volver a nuestro país a trabajar, a tener una vida. Pero yo seguía mi vida en Londres porque yo tenía mi trabajo, mi vida. Yo estaba muy acostumbrado a la vida en Inglaterra y en España, donde aprendí el español. Pero ya cuando encontré a mi mujer, nos casamos y tuvo mi hijo, eso cuando cambió la vida. Yo quería hacer algo más para proteger el futuro de mi niño y seguir la dinastía. Y yo entendía más de lo que significaba la monarquía y cómo la monarquía podía arreglar la situación en cualquier país, porque la monarquía viene con mucho
Estabilizador,
estabilizador, sí. unificador y todo eso. Y durante los años de monarquía en Yugoslavia, la situación fue muy calma, respectaba a todas las religiones y había mucha riqueza y toda la gente estaba muy feliz. Pero ya entró cuando entró el Segundo Guerra Mundial y con las ideologías diferentes como el comunismo, eso cuando estropeó la situación y la gente bueno, había los poderes extranjeros que querían apoyar el Estado de Yugoslavia socialista más que nuestra familia, porque era más fácil controlar esa situación para tener un pie o como influencia a Rusia, que nuestra familia, que fue la monarquía fue independiente, fue rico y no se puede controlar eso. Y los superpoderes quieren controlar la cosa. Así que hubo más apoyo al socialismo. Y eso la gente no entiende mucho. Que mucho dinero que venía a Yugoslavia, el 60% de los negocios fue con el oeste, no el este. Así que muy complicada la situación.
Sí, creo que hay todo un podcast
sí,
solamente
eso.
entre la monarquía o no tener monarquía, porque hay muchas posiciones, pero es muy interesante. And well, now let's turn to you. What's your story?
Let's see. So I'm Samson Mow. I'm the CEO of Jan3. Jan3 is a new Bitcoin tech company that I started last year. Prior to that, I was at Blockstream, and that is a Bitcoin infra company building stuff out for the Bitcoin protocol, second layers like Liquid and like Lightning, and also mining and satellites. We can talk about that if that's interesting.
Sure.
And before I joined Blockstream, I was the COO at BTC China, which was one of the biggest exchanges and mining pools in the world. So I've been working on Bitcoin for quite some time, and I've decided to do Jan3 to focus on our mission of accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization. So getting us to a Bitcoin standard faster and getting countries potentially to adopt Bitcoin like El Salvador has, and other places in Latin America could too.
Do you consider yourself to be a Bitcoin maximalist? Like, is it something that is that how you would define your theory of Bitcoin?
I don't think there's a good definition of Bitcoin maximalist, but I am definitely all in on Bitcoin and I don't like anything else.
Okay. Yeah. So in the seeing of the crypto market, right, we have a bunch of alternative coins, right, and we have, I mean, it's flooded at this point with a bunch of coins.
It's like 16,000 coins.
It's quite a bit, right? So you foresee a world where we adopt Bitcoin as the standard?
Well, Bitcoin is the only one that is decentralized. Right. It's the only one that is not a security. If you look at a lot of these other projects, they're basically securities. There's a company masquerading as a foundation. There's a founder / CEO. They can change their code at any time and change the protocol, change the rules. They can affect their own monetary policy. They can make themselves deflationary or whatever they need to do at the time to pump their price. So that's why there is not really an alternative to Bitcoin. So altcoins kind of a misnomer, because there is no alternative really. Right. It's really just Bitcoin. And I think we're going to see Bitcoin gain more and more dominance because they're kind of cannibalizing their own market, right? You see more and more projects coming out all the time, and they're running out of narratives to talk about, and they're running out of fake decentralization as well. So I mean, the SEC is going after some of these companies and cryptocurrencies, right? So if you can be served a notice and sued, they're not really decentralized.
What about the argument for, competing technologies as well as coins such as Ethereum, right, which is one of the more established projects in the market?
Well, I mean, they're misleading people into thinking they're decentralized. They employ a lot of decentralization theater, which is pretending they're decentralized, pretending there's lots of nodes and everything. But at the end of the day, most services on Ethereum run off of Amazon. It's all built on Amazon. So all you need is one cease and desist letter to AWS and the entire ecosystem disappears, right? This is why Bitcoiners are not fearful of crackdowns on Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is actually decentralized and it is very resilient. You can't shut Bitcoin down. There's just no way to do so. So when all these projects are scurrying around trying to find a way to save themselves, Bitcoiners are just sitting back and enjoying the show.
So going now un poquito, and I'm gonna Spanglish it up, and I'll ask the question for both of you, but I'll ask first in Spanish. ¿Por qué están en Costa Rica? ¿Qué buscan hacer en Costa Rica?
Mira, Costa Rica ahora están debatiendo la tema de una nueva ley de criptomonedas. Y aquí nos invitó la diputada Johanna para hablar sobre este tema, porque es necesario que los puertorriqueños entiendan de lo que es importante el Bitcoin y de lo que es importante separar Bitcoin con los otros criptomonedas. Lo que ha explicado Samson ahora mismo de las diferencias, eso hay que repetirlo en la ley. Mira, Bitcoin no debe ser regulado, debe ser abierto porque es moneda pura y es como la comunicación. No hay, si pones reglas sobre la comunicación, eso se hace que la comunicación se pueda más lento, más restricto y todo eso. Pero las otras monedas son seguridades, son proyectos, son empresas y cualquier empresa tiene que haber regulación, tiene que haber algo para proteger a los consumidores. Y por eso nos invitaron a hablar sobre ese tema en la Asamblea Legislativa. Y ayer tuve la oportunidad de hacer un discurso. Y también estamos aquí para visitar el país, para conocer otros proyectos, como es, por ejemplo, Costa Rica tiene mucha energía. Es un país de riqueza con energía. Y un costarriqueño no sabe cuánta energía tiene este país. Que este país tiene tanta energía que esa energía se puede usar con el Bitcoin para hacer más riqueza y para hacer más estabilidad y más... bueno, mira, la mayoría de energía de Costa Rica viene es hidroeléctrico. Y hay un exceso de energía durante algunos puntos del año. ¿Y qué pueden hacer con ese exceso de energía? Muchas veces lo gastan y lo perdemos. Pero con la minería de Bitcoin, esa energía lo podemos monetizar y usarlo para que podamos invertir en proyectos para mejorar la vida de un costarriqueño. Y por eso quizás Samson te pueda hablar de los bonos que ha diseñado el bono de Volcano en Salvador. Y aquí yo pienso que hay más oportunidades, más ventajas para hacer algo más espectacular con la energía de hidroeléctrico y hacer un hidrobón, por ejemplo.
Do you foresee Bitcoin as part of like a legal tender, as part of a strategy that involves both a fiat currency and Bitcoin, or do you move forward into a world where Bitcoin is the only currency?
Well, that is the ultimate end state. So we call that hyper-Bitcoinization. That's when you don't change Bitcoin into dollars anymore or colon, just like we don't change dollars into seashells anymore and expect it's going to hold value. You might buy a seashell for a bracelet or a trinket, but not money. But what we're trying to accomplish at Jan 3 is get nation states to think about a Bitcoin strategy and try to have two parallel tracks. So you'd have a fiat track and a Bitcoin track. And that is to minimize chaos as we move to that Bitcoin standard. So we've seen in recent history, actually, in India in 2016, there was a demonetization event. That's when the central bank removed some notes out of circulation or eliminates some currency. And that caused a lot of chaos and actually death of people. So they're lining up to trying to exchange their money quickly. People had medical procedures and they had to go to the hospital, and the hospital wouldn't take their money anymore and they were turned away. But if you can imagine the chaos of a very rapid transition to Bitcoin, that would be a lot of human suffering. So our goal is to minimize that kind of human suffering and get people dabbling in Bitcoin, get their foot in the door, have some Bitcoin strategy in place so that that transition can be as orderly as possible. And it could be like El Salvador, which is dollars, they have dollars already, and Bitcoin, or here it could be colon and Bitcoin.
When you think of Bitcoin as a currency, right? I think there's a lot of fear on the volatility of the currency, right? When we look at the last year, right? Insane ups, insane downs, you know, especially when you look at developing markets such as ours. You know, yes, for example, as far as El Salvador, remittances, right? Useful in the sense of like, you can have $100, you turn it into Bitcoin, transfer it, you skip Western Union. Could be good for them, you know, 20% of the GDP, more or less, remittances. Here, not so much, right? 1.5% of our GDP is remittances, doesn't really matter. But then you turn into the idea, well, let's store value in Bitcoin for a lot of our citizens, right? But then you start talking about developing economies where a volatile market, a loss of 20%, you know, could mean an incredibly dramatic loss of their portfolio, right? You know, when you're talking to people who are making $600, $700 a month on the higher end of the formal economy, in the informal economy, $300, $200 a month, right? They lose $5, they lose $10. It's a dramatic loss. How do we start looking at this issue of volatility? Of course, you know, we foresee a world where Bitcoin isn't as volatile, but it still is true today that it is. So how do we manage that?
Well, the thing is, Bitcoin cannot be volatile. If you look at Bitcoin as a ruler, it's a metal ruler with 21 million units on it. That's it. And those can be subdivided to very small units called Satoshis. But it's really a ruler. And the way I like to frame it is it's a ruler for measuring monetary value, because we actually have no mechanism to measure monetary value. Dollars fluctuate. You don't know how much dollars are in circulation, how many physical bills and coins there are. They can be lost, destroyed, etc. Gold, we don't really know how much gold there is. We have an estimate, but nothing concrete. And there's always new sources of gold found in random places all the time. And then you have all the other fiat currencies, which are sort of anchored to the US dollar, right? But Bitcoin is the only one that you can use to measure everything else because it is finite. So I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding when you say Bitcoin is volatile, because Bitcoin is very stable. You wouldn't say a kilometer is volatile or a megawatt is volatile, right? It's simply a measurement of money. But because Bitcoin is global and it is a very liquid market, we kind of see the volatility around us merged into Bitcoin, and it makes the Bitcoin price in terms of fiat go up and down rapidly. But actually, everything else is volatile. If you look at bank stocks, that's very volatile right now. And if you look at fiat currencies, it depends where you are in the world. If you're in Argentina, Turkey, that's Lebanon, very volatile. But then you have little oases of stability like Costa Rica is relatively stable, right? Even though it has appreciated against the US dollar. But I think you have to look at the signs of what is to come, and what is to come is going to be a failure of that legacy system. You're seeing it in money printing. You're seeing it in inflation and in equities. So Bitcoin is really the only safe haven. And the banking crisis recently in the US is a really good indicator of that problem. Silicon Valley Bank, 18th largest bank, Signature, all reputable banks. They're failing, and people are starting to think, where can I put my money? Which bank is safe? But the fact is, none of the banks are safe because it's built on a flawed system of money printing and opaqueness. So at the end of the day, you have to go to Bitcoin. If you reason out all the things, where can I keep my money safe? There is no place. It's only Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is a bearer asset that you can store yourself. So volatility is not a big deal. It's if you're thinking on a short time horizon, then yes, like maybe I bought a cup of coffee and the price went up and down, and yes, you're right. Merchants can lose on that. And that's why I think there's this place in this time still for stable coins to do that type of exchange. But when we talk about storing value, it's storing value for decades later. It's for future generations, for your children and their children's children. It's not for, going shopping next week. If you want to go shopping next week, take a US dollar stable coin, take Tether, or take colons.
Right. Yeah. I think those are important distinctions to start to be made in terms of usability of Bitcoin, right? Because as you expressed, right, we have a pool, especially in developing markets such as this, right? You implement an idea, hey, we're gonna have this cryptocurrency, whatever. People turn their colones into crypto. Monday something happens, a whale dumps their crypto because, I don't know, it happens sometimes in the market and they lose 5% of their value. It could be a dramatic change, right? But if we're arguing in favor of it's an asset that we're keeping on, for foreseeability, and especially I'm a big proponent of the technology itself. In fact, I think as far as like not just a currency, but as a technology that can be implemented in a multiplicity of things. I think it has appreciated value in society, not necessarily just as a current, as you say, it has a stability. But I think that's super interesting. One thing that I think, and I'll switch over to Espanol, but I'll say it in English as well, so that you're clued in. I think the criminal element of Bitcoin is always something that is brought up from, deterrence. People say, well, Bitcoin is one of the few ways in which we can have absolute anonymity between two transactions. Right? It's hard, it's difficult for a person to go full anonymous on Bitcoin, but it is possible. You create wallet after wallet, or you buy Bitcoin in person, you use it, millions of dollars, a little harder, hundreds of millions of dollars. But if you're dealing with, a couple $1,000s, petty cash, local drug deals, it is easier to do anonymity in Bitcoin. However, I mean, I'm one to say that I think there's anonymity in cash too, so it's a little bit of a redundant conversation sometimes with anonymity in Bitcoin. The
US dollar has facilitated more drug trade than any other form of money in the world.
I agree. Pablo Escobar's biggest problem was rats eating his cash, right? So I mean, it's when you think about that, it's a little bit funny. But anyways, I do wonder how you, Philip, tal vez, ¿cómo respondes a la pregunta sobre la criminalidad y la inseguridad que muchos gobiernos ven sobre si el Bitcoin puede ser más utilizado para el crimen que decir el dólar o el colón?
Bueno, porque lo que ha dicho Samson ahora mismo, que el dinero fiat es más fácil facilitar el mundo criminal que el Bitcoin. Es más fácil esconder tu moneda duro, no duro, ¿cómo se dice? Efectivo.
Sí, físico.
Físico, sí. El Bitcoin es un ledger, es un... ¿cómo se dice ledger en español? Es un... Sí.
I'm a big on Spanglish, I deal with her all day.
Bueno, es una cuenta abierta.
Ajá.
Es una cuenta abierta y que se puede ver las transacciones desde algo muy pequeño hasta la transacción más grande. Y claro que hay enormidad detrás de la cuenta y de las transacciones. Pero al mismo tiempo es verificable que las transacciones son usados para usos criminales, pero con el mundo fiat se puede esconder eso muchísimo más, porque no sabemos. Por ejemplo, los bancos centrales no hacen una cuenta de los bancos, no hacen como un audit. Si habría un audit, habría house en las calles mañana.
Sí, claro, por supuesto.
Por eso el Bitcoin se puede hacer un audit en segundos con tu node y sabes que las transacciones están correctas. Y sí, hay algo que va a ser algo criminal. Alguien va a comprar una droga en internet. Eso siempre va a pasar, pero eso es negligente. Sí, y eso ya es algo que ha pasado y fue parte de su journey, de su
camino.
De su camino.
Sí.
Pero eso ya es algo que no vemos ninguna problema. Yo veo que el sistema fiat es algo que se facilita al mundo criminal más fácil.
Claro.
I have something to add, if it's okay.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So you can't have it both ways. Criminals also drink water and they breathe air, right? Money is just another thing that humans use to go about their daily lives. So if you take money and you try to use it to fight crime, you erode the value proposition of money. Anytime you mess with the money, there are knock-on effects, and most people don't think about this. So if you use money as a surveillance tool to fight crime, then you have to surveil the money and you have to surveil the people, right? You can't get around that. So you have to just accept that money has to be money. And if you want to fight crime, you have to fight crime. But trying to use money as a proxy for fighting crime, you destroy the money in the end, right? Because mixing morality and money means, someday, sometime, maybe you're going to be deemed a criminal and you can't use the money anymore. And that's actually the case in Canada, where I'm from. So suddenly we could not donate to a protest because it was said it's illegal. So if you think about it, in any democracy, a cornerstone of it has to be that money remains money. Otherwise, you have no way to protest. Your democracy will fail. You have to have people that are allowed to have money of their own. And similar in Hong Kong when they're protesting, people had to leave coins out for other people to take the subway, because if you use your card to take the subway to go to a protest, well, there will be repercussions afterwards. So when money is degraded, there are a lot of knock-on effects that people don't think about. But a lot of governments don't consider that implication. They just want to maintain control. And a lot of governments are often fearful of their population, and that's because they're doing something wrong. If you look at Canada, again, as an example, Trudeau was fearful because he was doing something very wrong. So that was why he's cracking down through the use of money. But the good side of that is that it's educated a lot of people in Canada that are oblivious to what money is, on the importance of having money outside of the banking system that you have yourself.
Right. Yeah, no, I tend to agree with some of it. I think that it's absolutely essential for cryptocurrencies to be an option to monetize and to give a banking solution to people, right? I think control is exerted through money. We've seen it in countless examples in society, and authoritarian regimes tend to take advantage of that situation, take bank accounts, take them away from people, and there's a nice way. I'm interested in seeing, talking about CBDCs later, right? Because I think this clues in, right? Because then I think a lot of those concerns appear with CBDCs, but we'll get to that in a minute. I'm interested in talking a little bit about what you guys foresee in terms of exchanges, right? I think users, and especially, again, context, developing country, not the most tech savvy users, broadly speaking. Of course, there's a segment of the population that is deeply entrenched in, crypto and the space, whatever. Exchanges appear as the solution for the layman, right? Famously now, FTX, provides this crazy example of, we're gonna have, Tom Brady and all these people tell you that anybody can do crypto, right? Of course, there's a corrupt element there. And as you say, criminals will be criminals in every element of society, and you can't foresee that happening. However, I do think that crypto exchanges sometimes do lend themselves to this kind of centralization of a fund that should be generally decentralized per what, the Bitcoin, I don't know what you call it, like testament is, or the Bitcoin thing, right? So how do you think, users can go into this economy, considering into the Bitcoin economy, considering that now there's a well-documented fear of exchanges, which seemed for a while to be the answer for the layman. And what do you think comes now after, post SBF era, if we want to call it that?
Well, let me see how to frame this. Exchanges are temporary. So if you look at a crypto exchange, it's a crypto exchange because there's a lot of cryptocurrencies you can exchange, both dollar pairs and crypto to crypto pairs. But if you think that most of the cryptocurrencies are securities, then it kind of invalidates the need for an exchange, right? And also, like, what is the value proposition of a dog token? Right. Like dog token 1 versus dog token 2. Like, are you seriously telling me that it's valuable to exchange these two things? And I'm all for the free market, but a lot of these things are just misleading people into thinking they have value. But an exchange is a temporary thing, because going back to my original example of hyper-Bitcoinization and not needing to change back, what would you do with an exchange, like a seashell to dollar exchange? You don't need that. So there will be a time on the Bitcoin adoption curve where you hit a point which the only way to get Bitcoin is to work for Bitcoin, right? Not to buy Bitcoin from someone else, because they won't take anything else. It's work, right? And the interesting thing about the concept of proof of work is it's kind of hinting at this future, right? Proof of work is mining. Mining is converting energy to Bitcoin. Working for payment is converting your energy, Pedro, into money, which is Bitcoin. So it might be scary that all these exchanges are blowing up and exchanges are being cracked down on, like in the US, right? They're trying to close all the fiat on and off ramps, but it's just accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization, I see, because it just goes to a peer-to-peer exchange. Like, money is peer-to-peer. Gold coins back in the day when we were all peasants, living in dirt fields, we buy something, it's just trading things directly with one another. There's no centralized exchange. So we're kind of being forced to go back to peer-to-peer trade. So I see all the peer-to-peer marketplaces as gaining traction, and eventually people will just earn Bitcoin, not buy Bitcoin.
I see. No sé si tenés algo.
No.
Está bien.
Y otra cosa, bueno, al final, un consejo que no tu llaves, no tu moneda.
Claro.
Eso es lo que estamos diciendo al principio, de que es muy importante en el mundo, en la crisis bancario que estamos viviendo ahora, que quizás va a peorar. El Bitcoin arregla esa situación, porque tú tienes control de tu moneda y nadie te lo puede quitar. Tú tienes responsabilidad de eres soberano de tú mismo, tu mundo financiero. Así que eso va a cambiar muchísimo como somos, como manejamos nuestro riesgo yendo en el futuro. Claro.
Me interesa hablar un poquito también sobre inclusión financiera o financial inclusion, ¿verdad? Porque hay un gran sector, digamos, en Costa Rica le llamamos la brecha digital, the digital breach, right? There's a great amount of people in the country who have no access to internet, no access to phones, o tienen muy poco conocimiento tecnológico. En especial en Costa Rica se concentra, digamos, en la capital, en San José, ¿verdad? Tenemos mucho. En las costas empieza la brecha digital y ahorita estamos viviendo una crisis educativa en el país muy fuerte, en la cual, o sea, ya estamos hablando como de ni siquiera brecha digital, pero de brecha educativa, ¿me entendés? Es muy fuerte el problema que existe. A veces existe una preocupación, y creo que es válida, de que si empezamos a incorporar una nueva categoría económica, va a estar segmentada a solo las personas que tienen acceso. So that's to say, right, like we create an economy, we introduce a system that's essentially going to be segmented to the privileged that only they can access it, right?
Yeah. The only reason you have unbanked is because there are banks.
Right.
Right. Like if everything is a bearer asset, like Bitcoin or gold coins, there's no such thing as unbanked. If you go back into history and you look, no one's unbanked. You get coins. You keep your coins.
Right.
And
I guess his concern is the connection of the internet maybe in faraway places, which, but lo voy a decir en español, que sí, mira, claro que es más fácil usar Bitcoin con el internet, pero también se puede usar Bitcoin con un móvil Nokia antiguo, ¿sabe? De tecnología antigua. Y lo que está haciendo Bitcoin es banquear lo que no está banqueado, porque lo que ha dicho Samson ahora mismo es que el sistema bancario tradicional no llega a todos los sitios, porque para ellos no lo están haciendo para ser cruel, es que su modelo de negocio no le hace llegar tan lejos, porque no hacen dinero ahí. Pero con el Bitcoin puede llegar en cualquier parte del mundo. También puede usar Bitcoin en donde no hay internet. Se puede también transmitir Bitcoin sobre radio. Pero mira, en Costa Rica se puede ver esta situación de privilegio con lo que tiene Costa Rica, y eso es energía. Y eso, hacer un hidrobono, bonos, y con la mitad del dinero si haces un hidrobono de mil millones de dólares, la mitad se va a comprar Bitcoin y la otra mitad se va a infraestructura. No solo para mejorar la infraestructura de electricidad y de energía, pero también para la infraestructura de telecomunicaciones, el internet. Y eso es fácil hacer una conexión en cualquier parte del país si hay dinero, si hay la inversión. Y eso donde va a venir la ventaja de hacer minería con Bitcoin. Y ahí llegar al internet y la educación, la privilegia de tener un sistema financiero en cualquier parte del país.
So Bitcoin is just information at the end of the day. So what that's done is transformed money into pure information. Whereas money has to be centralized on a server somewhere, if it's dollars in the central bank or a central bank digital currency, which we'll talk about, or it's a promissory note or some sort of, you redeem the money elsewhere, or it's gold coins. But now money is just information. Now, money being information allows us to take full advantage of technology. So you actually don't need internet to access the Bitcoin network. There's Blockstream satellite, which is broadcasting Bitcoin blocks. And all you need is a computer and a satellite dish. And someone has set up their own makeshift satellite dish somewhere in Portugal and they're receiving it. But technically, one person doing that could allow you to receive Bitcoin. Now to spend it, you need internet. So you need to go to some place and broadcast your transaction. But that could be done through SMS as well. So there's a lot of ways that we can use Bitcoin and leverage that technology. But again, I want to reiterate the point that money is information. And information can have many form factors. It could be on your phone. It could be on a USB stick. It could be on a piece of paper. Or even this thing. This is a Sats card made by a company called CoinKite. And this is a NFC card that can store Bitcoin. And all you need is a phone app to read and see if there is a balance on it. So if you have no internet, you have no phones, I could just give you this and say there's $5 on it, and you can check it, and yes, it verifies. The cryptography verifies, and you know that you have $5. So you can use Bitcoin as a bearer instrument to physically exchange, and you can have this.
This is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Agency Bitcoin adoption. This is really nice. I hadn't seen these yet. These are super cool.
But we're just on the cusp of being able to bring Bitcoin to the masses through technology. And if you look at the trajectory of human civilization, we're making rapid advances in technology, but it seems to be we're not able to get very far ahead. And that really has to do with the legacy financial system, the fiat system of printing easy money, where everyone's focus is on getting more fiat and taking away from our advances. So we're making constant technological gains, but they're kind of looting that whole system to enrich themselves instead of giving more to the people and being able to use technology to further civilization.
I'm a Bitcoin proponent. I'm actually funny. The SBF story to me is kind of funny because when I was like 17, me and a buddy realized that exchange rates between different currencies were different, and we tried to leverage them.
Arbitrage.
Yeah. So we try to do a little arbitrage when we were like, I don't know, still in high school. So I've been into it. One of my worst nightmares is I have a calendar notification still on my computer from 2013 that has a Bitcoin price of $315, and it was like buy Bitcoin, and I never did. So it tortures me to this day. Having said that, I'm a big Bukele skeptic. I think his project is potentially good. However, I do recognize his state to be currently an authoritarian regime. My opinion, I know you guys are not here to discuss politics. We're here to discuss Bitcoin. I'm not going to go, of course. However, I think there are lessons from what El Salvador did, which can be applied to the broader implementation of Bitcoin in countries. One thing that really interests me is what happened with Chivo Wallet and what can be learned from that experience. Of course, I mean, I think and I'll give you my perspective first so that you see where I stand on the subject. I think that because there are a little bit less checks and balances, it was implemented a little too quick. The law passed within 5 hours of being discussed in Congress. I don't think congressmen even really understood the depth in which the Bitcoin law passed. And as such, we saw, crazy stuff. We saw, about 20% of the bonus that was given to Chivo Wallet users was, openly fraudulent because they weren't able to check IP addresses. So I could put El Salvador from my computer, claim the bonus. And I mean, they're trying to go after it. But of course, tracking a wallet that some guy in maybe Serbia, no, I'm just kidding, it's very difficult to do. Having said that, I do think that, like you say, I think it's potentially something that they'll see the benefits of in time. However, them being kind of pioneers in the market, whether it was okay or not, is a conversation for another day. I would like to, though, discuss what do you see as the experiment, if we're to call it that, of El Salvador today, and what can we learn from what happened in El Salvador, and what lessons can be implemented if we were to move forward in Costa Rica? Because I can tell you that in Costa Rica, the level of scrutiny, the level of public pushback, the level of debate that we'll go into in order to accept or decline Bitcoin is going to be monumentally different. This is a highly bureaucratic, highly politicized, and highly democratic, really, country where voices from every part of the population will be heard. And I think a very strong argument will need to be made. And there are warning signs from El Salvador.
Yes.
So let's start with Chivo Wallet maybe, and because I think that's a very poignant example. And then we can speak broadly of what you guys both think of the Salvador experiment, let's call it, with Bitcoin.
Right. Well, I wouldn't call it an experiment. If you think that Bitcoin is ultimately going to be money for the world, then it's just a logical next step.
Right.
But it depends on what you think of Bitcoin, really.
Right.
If you think Bitcoin is a maybe, then it's an experiment. But for us, I think it's a certainty. And then it's just, you want to get as much Bitcoin as you can now before everyone else starts getting it, because money is important. So Chivo Wallet, I think I agree with you. It was launched very quickly and rushed. And if they had waited longer, it probably would have been a better experience. And there has been a blowback from the population about this because it was not good. It was very buggy, and it's sort of tainted by that that bugginess. Like, people still think Chivo's buggy, even though they fixed a lot of it now, but that perception still lingers. But I would say it's a mixed bag. Like, Chivo has a good functionality, which is it lets people in El Salvador get Bitcoin, and it can cut out some of the middlemen from the remittance process. And remittances is a big thing for them. It offers like zero friction. So if you're a merchant, you take Bitcoin, you get dollars, and you can link it to your bank and take out the dollar. So it's helping to build that Bitcoin-based economy. But of course, it's custodial. So if I were to do it, I would do it on a non-custodial core and integrate some service that would allow you to convert, but people would have their own keys and everything like that. But, given that it was the first time a country did it, I would give them a pass. Like, at least they're doing something. And I think Bukele, regardless of your opinion, I think you can see that him giving people Bitcoin is a good thing, because it's the opposite of the problem where you have in Canada, where the leader is freezing people's accounts that are protesting. Like, he's educating them on money that cannot be frozen. So they could protest against him, and nothing he can do will stop that at that point. But I would say El Salvador is a net good for Bitcoin adoption because they're anchoring it, and they do have that legal tender, and that can encourage other places in the region to look at Bitcoin. Now, I don't believe that every country in Latin America is going to follow the exact same game plan of rolling out a Bitcoin strategy. And we're learning this ourselves, being here and talking to people and figuring out the lay of the land. And we understand, as you're saying, that Costa Rica is very proud of their democracy, and there's a lot of voices, and those have to be reconciled. So I actually think the best way for Bitcoin adoption may be doing a Bitcoin bond, or Este doing a public-private mining partnership and accumulating Bitcoin. So they will just have Bitcoin. And as Bitcoin becomes more and more valuable, the government will look and say, hey, we have this thing here, and it's like worth $30 billion now. Where'd that come from? Oh, it's Bitcoin. And we mined it with hydropower, and it's green, and we can use that to finance government programs, build roads, build hospitals, everything like that. And I think that might be the
internet.
Telecommunications. So that might be the best way, I think, for Costa Rica to simply get Bitcoin. Don't worry about the legal tender aspect of it or Bitcoin laws, but just get Bitcoin, and the rest will come. Because as you said, it's going to be challenging, but having Bitcoin, it's like finding an old wallet with money in it. It's once you have it, it changes your thinking.
Right. Well, for some,
Bitcoin está basado, es una moneda basada en energía, y Costa Rica tiene mucha energía. Así que vosotros tenéis Bitcoin, pero solo hay que convertir esa energía en Bitcoin. Y lo que ha dicho Samson, ese Bitcoin se va a convertir en inversiones. Y se va a enriquecer la gente, la puebla.
¿Por qué?
Sí.
¿Por qué piensan que, a pesar de que ha habido una inversión grande por parte del gobierno de Bukele hacia Bitcoin, todavía la utilización es baja, ¿verdad? Vemos que entre un 1.5%, 2% de los remittances es que ya me estoy, Spanglish is getting to me, ¿verdad? De los pasos de dinero a Estados Unidos, a El Salvador, son por parte de Bitcoin, ¿verdad? Tenemos muy pocos en negocios lo están utilizando. ¿Qué ha sido esa barrera, right? Like what's the barrier keeping people from using it, even though the push from the government has been monumental, these crazy flashy shows and etc.
Es porque se pasó muy rápido. Tienes razón que pasó muy rápido, y la educación de Bitcoin no es un proceso rápido. Para entender Bitcoin hay que estudiar muchas horas, quizás 100 horas. Así que la gente va poco a poco va a entender de lo que tienen y las ventajas que tienen. Y que han sido uno de los primeros en el mundo de tener Bitcoin libertadamente, ¿sabes? Y eso, bueno, que estoy... So I lost my train of thought.
In Spanish.
No, in Spanish.
You're saying that they move too fast.
Yeah, sí, pero eso se puede ver ya cómo está cambiando El Salvador, de que su turismo está aumentando y que está abierto a los negocios digitales, está abierto. Mira, muchos salvadorenses ahora se están mudando otra vez a El Salvador. Esta migración, rotación, esto es algo muy especial porque hubo años que estaba emigrando los estadounidenses a América para ganar mejor vida. Ahora va a ser el contrario.
Sí.
Ojalá que tuviéramos esto en Serbia, okay. Porque en Serbia tenemos un gran problema de lo que dicen es el brain drain problema. Y va a ser ahora mismo, si no cambia la situación en Serbia, va a haber una crisis de población. Pero eso El Salvador lo ha arreglado de este momento. Y la gente están mudando a El Salvador. Y no solo salvadorenses, pero extranjeros. Porque estos extranjeros miran lo que está pasando en El Salvador y dicen, tienen mejores reglas que en mi país. Yo quiero aprovechar eso en El Salvador. Sí. Y eso es bueno, lo puede replicar otros países, bueno, en diferentes modos, pero eso es evidencia que está funcionando más o menos la estrategia de Bukele.
Es un gran publicista.
Sí. Sí.
He's a great publicist. I don't know if it'll in the end turn out exactly how he expects, pero
pero dice que cuando if you let Bitcoin out, can't stop it. No lo puedes parar.
I do. Yeah. In terms of the Bitcoin project, sí. I do hope that it turns around more liberty for people, because as you say, yeah. I think it could provide a solution for a great deal of the population. And I mean, I do think that like you say, right now, given the fiat currency conversion, we are in a bit of a volatile market. Who knows where it'll settle? It's going up right now. But last year terrifies me a little bit. But at the end, I'll ask you guys about what do you guys think people should have in their portfolio in terms of Bitcoin. But I'm sure you'll say like 100%.
If you know the answer, then.
But so now let's talk about CBDC, right? Para contexto, I'm saying this a little bit in Spanish, ¿verdad? Es una moneda, es una criptomoneda centralizada emitida por el Banco Central de un país, right? It's a cryptocurrency given by the central bank of a country. Now, these are highly controversial in the crypto space because, we've been talking about the freedom of being able to have a coin in order that nobody can see the transactions, right? But then there are some proponents, and especially you see it from legacy media and a lot of traditional banking systems saying, hey, this is the way to go. CBDC is like smart money, as they call it, right? I've seen some decent arguments in terms of, like, for example, when the US was giving out bonds during the pandemic, right? You could have been time-based. That seemed pretty cool, right? You could say like, hey, we're going to give you $1,000, but you have to spend it within 3 months or it's going to expire and run away. We'll take it away. But there's some ideas out there in the market that seem to make sense. But I like to hear. Yeah, I personally I like what Satoshi set down originally, and I'm a bit of a private freedom maximalist. But I love to see how you speak on CBDCs and how you see them playing a role in the crypto space.
You first.
Bueno, lo que has dicho es que el gobierno de estado vende los CBDCs como algo que facilite tu vida, que lo hace más cómodo. Pero eso es viendo en una vista muy, muy estrecha. Lo que no dicen es que ese dinero viene con muchas condiciones. Sí. Lo que ha dicho, que quizás hay que gastar ese dinero en un año. Eso no es dinero. O quizás no puedes gastar tu dinero en este sitio sí. No se puede dar, le pueden quitar el dinero en un segundo si quieres. O si no, y si quieren pagar tus impuestos, o aumentar los impuestos, no hay manera de discutir eso. Lo aumentan y quitan impuestos en un segundo. Así que los CBDCs es ir a un mundo completamente totalitario, ¿no? ¿Sabe? Que es control completo y eso no es libertad. Y lo que estamos, bueno, eso es completamente centralizado, el contrario completamente de lo que es Bitcoin.
100% de acuerdo. Sí. Esa es mi perspectiva. I agree entirely with that. De hecho que una de las propuestas de nuestro actual presidente en el plan de gobierno era establecer un CBDC, y en la entrevista que le hicimos acá, where you were sitting, esa fue mi gran interrogante, you know, like, to me, cryptocurrency issued by the government means total control of currency by the government, which is inescapable, right? Like, if the government wants to take money away from you on Tuesday because now you're a dissident, us, the press, we're not the most liked people in the world sometimes, you know, our accounts are frozen and we can't do anything, right? As opposed to Bitcoin, I can just take my key, put it in my pocket, now I'm off somewhere. What is your opinion on that?
Well, I think obviously CBDCs are bad. The thing is, they could have made it good, but they've never chosen to do it in a good way because the technology already exists to do a private, confidential bearer type asset, like with the Liquid network, the Bitcoin sidechain that Blockstream launched. There's also Chaumy and eCash. All of these things already exist, but they're not interested in it. They want to do new R&D to create a system where they have control. So I guess it comes down to, people should ask the politicians pushing for this and the central bankers pushing for this, what is the bottom line here? Like, what do you really want? And where will you go? Like, where is your line on making people adopt it? Because the marketing pitch at the beginning is always like, it's for your convenience, Pietro. Like, it's, you know, lets you pay your bills easy, smart money, and we can give you money easily. But what if no one uses it? Are you going to force people to use it and hold them accountable? Get a firm answer. Like, yeah, if no one uses it, we're going to force you, because that is the end state. No one wants to use an inferior money. People are not stupid. Like, they may not understand money well, but once they start seeing, oh, bank accounts are getting frozen, I mean, normal people start to wake up, just like in Canada with the freezing. And in Canada, the government actually had to go through one step. They had to talk to the banks to say, please freeze. With the central bank controlling it, there is no separation of power. You just call the central bank, say, freeze these guys. Done. It's over, right? There's no separation of power at all. Full control. So we see examples of this in Africa, in Nigeria with e-Naira. If you look at the e-Naira website, it's like, you know, for your convenience, it's good for you and environmentally sound and convenient, and it's money for the people. No one used it. Less than 1% of people used e-Naira. Why would you use an inferior money, right? And now they're forcing you to use it. They're locking your bank account, restricting withdrawals, restricting your access to paper bearer money. So that's the end state. The only way to do it is to force people. And even then, they'll fail. In China, they have a CBDC too, but again, they're not seeing much adoption. And I mean, China has a very good grip on the internet and everything. And if they can't make it work, I don't think anyone else could make it work.
Yeah. Venezuela tried con el petrodólar. No sé si escucharon de eso. They came out with it. And it was during a period of hyperinflation. They pushed it, and then that hyperinflated as well. So it was like just one asset hyperinflating over another. It was kind of a crazy thing. So in terms of what a country you foresee, like Costa Rica, moving forward, the strategy that you see as more logical is maybe a government issued effort into mining, generate Bitcoin in the country, see how it works as an asset, as a monetary, currency, and then naturally have people come to it in a more educated way, más o menos, tal vez. What in terms of when you think of, so now let's get a little practical. When you think of a user, like say, I don't me, right? I don't have a ton of investment cash to put towards something that could in 20 years generate me some wealth. I'm more of I need cash today to buy something today. So first, how much of my portfolio or like my currency do you think I should have invested into Bitcoin?
I mean, is it a question between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency or Bitcoin and
Bitcoin
fiat
and
money?
Fiat money.
I would say as much as you're comfortable with. Most people still need fiat money to pay for things like electricity, rent, food, etc. So I would say have at least a good couple of months of fiat money. But the best way is that you're mining fiat. You have a job that's paying you in fiat, and you convert whatever is comfortable for you into Bitcoin for long-term savings. And don't keep more fiat than you're willing to lose at this point, because the banks are starting to fail.
Right. Are you all in on Bitcoin?
I don't have any Bitcoin. I lost it all in a boating accident.
Nice. Philip, ¿vos qué pensás? ¿Cómo ves el usuario regular usando Bitcoin?
Pienso que lo que ha dicho Samson es no... tienes que... Ahora estás viviendo en un mundo fiat y hay que gastar fiat. Pero también yo estoy muy... no convencido. Es cierto que Bitcoin es el dinero del futuro, que se va a aumentar. Es el único ejemplo de escasez digital que vamos a tener. Nunca vamos a tener otra oportunidad de replicar la situación de donde nació el Bitcoin. Así que es casi imposible que no se va a aumentar en valor. Así que lo mejor es comprar Bitcoin o hacer un programa de dollar cost average, DCA, por ejemplo, cada semana, al mismo tiempo cada semana o cada mes, un poquito de lo que estás cómodo y asegurarlo en tu monedero, en tu monedero frío, un cold wallet, y seguir tu vida haciendo cosas, ¿cómo decir? Trabajando normal. Y hacer valor a la sociedad. Y yo pienso que eso para mí es más, te da más tranquilidad que una pensión normal. Una pensión normal, que normalmente el modelo normal de pensión son 60% acciones y 40% en bonos. Los acciones y bonos ahora están completamente estopeados. Las pensiones son el sistema de pensión es otro sistema Ponzi. Eso algún día se va a romper. Por eso hay que ver lo que está pasando en Francia. Que han subido la edad de jubileza a los 67, más de 2 años. ¿Por qué han hecho eso? Porque saben que necesitan, si que pueden hacerlo, lo aumentarán a los 80 años. Que saben que el sistema de pensión está roto y va a romper más. Y sabe que hay que imprimir más dinero, hacer más cosas estúpidas de fiat para seguir el mundo ridículo donde vivimos. Así que mi consejo es poner más dinero que tú estás cómodo en Bitcoin.
Y para terminar, yo sé que hay una visión como un endgame, que no hay conversión a fiat, pero vivimos en un mundo donde todavía existe. ¿A dónde percibís que va a llegar el monto actual de Bitcoin, verdad? El año pasado, en algún momento, 100,000 for Bitcoin, $1 million per Bitcoin, where do you guys see that conversion currency landing at? Are we going to get to a stable market? Of course, like I just said, I think I understand that you guys see it as a ultimate end game where there is no conversion to fiat, but I think temporarily and in the time being, it is a part of the reality that it will be. So what do you see?
It depends more on the fiat system. I mean, if the US dollar hyperinflates, there's no upper bound. It could be $5-10 million of Bitcoin, but what does $1 million buy you at that point? Maybe a hamburger, right? So Bitcoin is not a part of the old system. It's a way to measure the old system. So I don't think it really matters. What we see in the future is dollar sat parity, where it's like 1 Satoshi is basically $1, and you just price things in Satoshis.
Okay.
Y no vamos a hablar de un Bitcoin.
Yeah.
El nombre Bitcoin, yo pienso que en el futuro no estamos hablando del Bitcoin, vamos a estar hablando de Satoshis. Y quizás no hablamos de Satoshis, va a ser solamente one unit of exchange.
Claro, como a universal unit. Yeah, well, thank you very much. I won't keep you anymore for your time. I'm very thankful. I think, I've been a very public skeptic of the Salvador I'll call it experiment. I know. But it's not on behalf of the technology of Bitcoin. It's more on how the project has been led. I'm not here to discuss policy with you guys. I know that's not, you're not.
Well, what we want is more countries adopting. So I see El Salvador as an anchor, but more countries adopting is better. And that's actually better for El Salvador too, because then the powers that be are going to have more to contend with, not just slap down one country that's misbehaving.
Right.
But I think the beauty of Bitcoin is it works for anyone in any way. So even if the government of Costa Rica doesn't want to adopt Bitcoin, they can still take advantage of Bitcoin. They can still mine Bitcoin, because the important thing that's changed is now energy is money. You can use stranded energy or energy that is, in the mountains where the hydro plants are, and you can get money. Whereas previously you would need to sell it to somebody nearby, because you can't transmit electricity over very, very long distances without serious degradation of our infrastructure. So instead of selling it to someone or just wasting it, just use it to convert to Bitcoin. And if you don't believe in Bitcoin and you're a skeptic, sell it all, keep colon or dollars, whatever works for you, because someone else is going to buy it from you. That's the beauty. And you could do that. You could finance all of the country operations. I know the president here is looking for ways to increase revenues through tax, but think about this. Why do you need to tax anyone if you're an energy-rich country? If you're an energy-rich country like Dubai, the UAE, where they have, or Saudi Arabia, where they have oil reserves, they don't tax people. They pay you to be a citizen. So you could turn the whole paradigm on its head. Instead of taxing people in Costa Rica, you get paid to be Costa Rican, because there's so much energy here. And I think people just haven't made that connection yet, that money is energy. We have a lot of energy here.
100%. Filip, ¿quieres agregar algo?
No, estoy de acuerdo con eso, sí. Cada país tiene su propia estrategia, y yo pienso que Costa Rica tiene más ventajas que El Salvador, que tiene más energía. Claro. Y lo que ha dicho que tú estás contra, la estrategia autoritaria de Bukele, pero aquí tenéis una democracia muy bien desarrollada. Pero también esa democracia desarrollada viene con mucha burocracia y se puede ir muy lentamente. Así que yo pienso que el mejor estrategia para Costa Rica es minar y usar la energía que tienes, porque vosotros tenéis un montón de energía y esa energía es dinero.
Claro, sí, no podría estar más de acuerdo. Y creo que inclusive ir lento puede ayudar a ese proceso de adopción y prevenir mucho de lo que sucedió en El Salvador, que ocurrió muy rápido y tuvieron muchas interpolaciones y desastres y otras cosas. Pero bueno, muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much for your time.
Gracias.
Muchas gracias.